Hey folks, thanks so much for your support through listening. If you really want to take that support to another level, we'd love it if you would support us by liking and following us wherever you listen to your podcast. Now, what would be really cool is if you help us fly this kite on pages like www.patreon.com. A simple search on that page for Kites and Strings will provide a gateway to donate as little as $1 per month. Cool perks are also available, so please check us out. For now, enjoy the episode. Welcome to Kites and Strings, the podcast about creativity. My name is Steve Plume. My co-host, Catherine Shinnock, and I are both registered art therapists and licensed clinical professional counselors, in addition to being creatives. In this podcast, we explore creativity, paying particular attention to the tension that is often experienced by those who choose a creative lifestyle, and that can be compared to the requisite tension between a colorful, artful kite and its stabilizing string. Along the way, we interview fabulous guests who have found their own success managing their tensions and living their own creative lives. Today, we introduce Gráinne Hunt, who is a singer-songwriter from Dublin, Ireland. Those that have listened to some recent episodes know that Kites and Strings seem to have a fair amount of steady listeners in random cities, and Dublin, Ireland is one such city. So we reached out to artists from these cities, starting off with musicians. Tracy Hamlin met that need for our Ashburn, Virginia folks. For Gráinne, we love that she writes, but she also plays beautiful homage to traditional songs from Ireland in the mother tongue, some of which you'll hear during this episode. And speaking of tongues, as we discussed early on, it took some work for this American tongue to do any sort of justice to her name. But for now, no matter how you pronounce it, you will soon hear that Gráinne truly grabs that string and flies her kite.
Gráinne?
Yeah.
Gráinne, is that better?
Like, it's really hard to explain. It's like,
How do you say your name?
if you were from the northwest of Ireland, you would say Gráinne. And I would say Gráinne.
Gráinne.
Oh, it's like a, yeah, oh, Gráinne.
Gráinne.
Yeah.
Gráinne. Okay.
Gráinne.
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 Gráinne. Okay.
Yeah.
Just trying to get that in. How are you doing, Gráinne?
Good.
We were just talking about the wonders of technology and Zoom, and
It's crazy. It's crazy that we can be talking to you and you're so far. Well, I'm in New York City, so you're not that far from me.
Yeah, like just around the corner.
you guys can do coffee.
Mm-hmm.
We're all in different places having this conversation right now. That's really random.
Yeah.
I actually did a live stream with somebody in Australia.
Wow.
We'd come together and we'd be able to like chat to each other, and then I'd do a song and then we'd come together again. And it was so lovely because, well, I live on my own. So like doing a live stream from my house means I'm singing to the walls. So like to be able to finish a song and have somebody just be like, oh, I really like that, like what you did, or blah, blah, blah. It's just so lovely.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things early on, I play some music and trying to do virtual things. And for a while, right afterwards, we did a lot of virtual, and pretty soon it seemed to run its course. And I think I'm sensing it's coming back.
Yeah. I suppose I feel like there's been a while here. Certainly there was a round of funding that went towards venues and promoters in Ireland to encourage them to host more shows, and shows that would have been cancelled during the year. So all of that kind of funding came together maybe at the beginning of November, and the venues were encouraged to put these shows on all before Christmas. Every night of the week, there was multiple gigs online that people could attend if they wanted to. And it almost felt like overkill.
Yeah.
It's hard, I think, as well, when people are working from home and looking at a screen all day, that do they really want to sit down and look at another screen?
Right. Well, and what's unfortunate is it's just really difficult to replicate the live event, right? It's impossible to replicate the live event.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's climbing back. Well, I don't know. It's a weird place because it's either going to come back to some live shows, smaller live shows, or just more of the virtual stuff. It's hard to predict.
It is. That's the thing. I mean, I feel like certainly like if you're a bigger artist, there's more chance for you to do things. Whereas if you're kind of not quite starting out, but you're doing stuff and you're in that middle ground where you would normally be playing loads of shows, but lots of small shows, say, that to get back to that is really difficult because you're not playing in huge rooms. You're not playing to huge crowds normally. And to get back to having like a socially acceptable, distanced crowd in a room where you can do that at this point in time is really difficult, you know?
Right. So for you, how many gigs were you doing?
I was doing like maybe 5 or 6 trips to Germany a year, and each of those could be between 3 or 4 gigs once they were all covering costs and making a bit of money, up to like me being there for 10 days. And then over and back to Switzerland a couple of times, and Austria, Czech.
Okay.
Like a bit in Ireland, UK, and then if I could sneak into the US and kind of go and do a course or something, and
Right.
not play music over there because you're not allowed.
Wait, you're not allowed to play music in the US if you're a musician from overseas? You need like a special visa or permit or something to do that?
Yeah, so an artist visa for the US is like a 1-year artist visa is like $4,000.
Wow.
And basically
Whoa.
you have to show that you have a series of gigs booked, like significant gigs, significant income, that you are warranted, A, to spend this money on this visa, and B, to be given this visa. And then also they can go, well, actually you've only got like 2 weeks worth of shows, so we're only going to give you like a 1-month visa. So they don't have to give you the year. Like, I mean, I've been to the US a few times with the guitar on my back, like to go and do other things. Like I recorded my record in Nashville. Like I have friends in Portland, and I went to a songwriting thing in LA, and like I did another songwriting thing in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
We do US immigration on Irish soil before we get on the plane.
Yeah.
So you do all the queuing up, and we do get that all out of the way before we leave. It's horrible, and this waiting, and these guys, and they're just, you know, asking you questions. And the last time I went over was to do the thing in Colorado, and I was bringing my guitar, I think I was, and you know, I had all the paperwork. I'd gotten funding for it. I was like the Arts Council here in Ireland had funded me to go. I had all my paperwork for like all of my internal flights. I had rented a camper van instead of staying in a hotel and renting a car. But I'd everything. I'd like my payment, my receipts, all of that. And I got to the counter and I handed my stuff over to the guy, and he's like, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I'm going to a songwriting camp in Colorado." And he was like, "You're not teaching at it, are you?" But like he like when he went through, and he was like, "And who funded it?" And he's like looking at the documentation like with my name on it and their name on it, and it's official, sent me money, and he's like questioning, like it's super difficult to get in. So like every time I travel, I'm like absolutely shitting it that I'm not going to get in. I like don't assume that I'm going to get there until I get through immigration and I'm like boarding the plane, and then I'm like, whoa, I'm going to America, you know.
Wow.
It's hard.
It's upsetting to me that is that way.
Yeah.
No, I think there's a different arrangement with the UK that you can get like kind of like nearly like a small time musician visa, and it's like $200-300 or something like that, and you guys can come over and do a little tour and play music and do your little gigs and go home. So like kind of the equivalent of what I would like for the US, but it's I'm not sure if it's reciprocal for the UK, but we certainly don't have it for here.
Like my dream for the world is that we reach this place of like a global system where we all just can like visit each other and can live where we want to live. And I know it's a super like utopian fantasy. And
it'd be so nice, wouldn't it?
I mean, because we're functioning that way now. Like I've got people I know who are in like Poland and Sweden and Guam and Australia. I've got people who I'm friends with who live all around the world. I think it's an example of where human socialization and the arts have really used technology as a tool for connection. And the kite is like fucking flying away of like through the internet, and the string is like, no. Where's your passport? What's your visa? Have you paid me money? Give it to me now.
Landing either side of me, I close my eyes.
So we just paid homage to the miracle that is the internet and the human spirit that has used it as a tool to adapt and create means to stay connected. Now we're going to dig into the massive role music plays in Ireland and what makes Irish music, paying some particular attention to the language and traditional music, which is something that Gráinne has embraced.
And breathe out, breathe in.
Okay, let's hear about the art scene, the music scene, what's going on in Dublin. You Googled and you popped up, and here we are. So it's pretty cool.
That intrigues me. I'm like, what did you Google to find me? I'm like, really? Seriously?
I don't remember the exact how I put it in, but I put in, I'm sure, Dublin, Ireland based musicians or something to that effect. And you were on that list. So yeah, I've been a fan of Irish folk music, and there's certainly a different feel, a different sound. And I've wondered about just music in general, how different areas have these different sounds, and why this area breeds this type of music.
Well, I suppose like it sort of kind of goes back to the first conversation we had about my name and how we say things differently here.
Yeah.
You know, and that's part of it. And I mean, all of that west coast of Ireland would still have a really, really, really strong traditional music context. You could literally drive up and down the west of Ireland and just like drop into sessions left, right, and center. And I suppose that historical connection to Irish music and this telling of stories is just so ingrained in us. Like everybody seems amazed by the amount of music that there is in Ireland. And that's so true. Like there is so much music in our communities and in our lives. We are constantly surrounded by it and creating music.
Yeah.
And I don't even think it's something that we're necessarily conscious of. I think it's just something that is in us historically. And I suppose as a people that we were a colonized country, and we, you know, were downtrodden and sent off to live in the west of Ireland that was really barren, and then not allowed to use your language. So things like that, it all became a very verbal tradition and all about like singing and creating and passing it on. So we were all very conscious of that. And I think it's just in our DNA. You know, they do say that historical events change the structure of your DNA. And I think it's actually just in an Irish person's DNA, you know.
You don't question it. You're not, like you said, you're not even conscious. It's just the air you breathe. And it's like, well, why wouldn't you have this?
Yeah.
What I really took from that is like how music and art are such great vessels for holding on to Indigenous culture and traditions. When you have a group of people together and you really stay connected to who you are and who your people are and what's important, there's a strong connection for people to circle back to what their roots are.
Like literally as you were saying that, I was thinking like, I'm 39, in school in Ireland, everybody has to learn the Irish language. Depending on where you go to school, unfortunately, there are a lot of people who don't get as we say here, a gra for it. So gra means love. So if you don't have a gra for the language, you don't have a love for the language. So, and some teachers only teach it because they have to, not because they want to. I was really lucky. I had great teachers throughout school and I absolutely loved it. And I went to a Gaeltacht over the summer. So you go to an Irish college where you only speak Irish. So you go and you stay somewhere for 3 weeks and you don't speak English, you only speak Irish, and you go to classes and you do music and dancing and all that sort of thing. That's great. But I have come back in the last couple of years, I've got a project now with a guy that I went to college with. We work on songs that are both in English and in Irish. It is something that like I'm going back to now and kind of considering like, God, like what have I been doing for the last 20 years? Why haven't I been speaking Irish more? And so it's really nice to be able to like bring that back into my life and the creative end of my life. Do you know what I mean? As opposed to just like how I'm living.
You're like, this is like who I am and how can I hold on to and share with the world? I'm Irish.
Yeah.
Does it feel like then you're coming back and introducing something old but new again? Do you synthesize that and add something new to it? How do you approach that?
I suppose it's not something I've ever really thought about so much. So Brendan and I went to university together. He's a classical guitar player, and when we were at university, like we were best mates, but we never played any music together. A couple of years ago, got in touch, and his dad was running a festival in the west of Ireland. He was putting the opening concert together, and he was like, "Let's get together and let's play some songs, and I'll arrange them, and you sing them, and we'll do it." And he lives in Switzerland, so we were like doing this kind of like this, you know, like over the internet, sending each other voice notes, trying to figure out what key it should be in, like only rehearsing the day of the gig because, you know, he flew in from Switzerland. But when we came to like looking at songs and what things we would consider, I was kind of the one that was going, oh, well, what about this one? And what about this one? And then like, it's like all of these songs that you're not necessarily aware that you know suddenly come up. It's like these things that you were singing probably for years in school, but if someone asked you if you knew it, you might not remember it. This one song was like, I was like, we have to do this. And Brendan was like, yeah. I was like, no, I don't care. We're putting it in. I have a connection with it. So I have a friend who was working with a quartet in the Netherlands re-recording a piece that was in a game, like an online gaming thing.
Okay.
And it had at the end a piece that was spoken in a Spanish dialect. So then they asked my friend, oh, maybe it'd be really nice to have this in Irish. Could you do it? And she's like, no, I don't speak Irish, but I know someone who could. So she like calls me.
Maybe this is the positive takeaway maybe from this whole thing, is that we're finding new ways to connect with other folks. And we've always talked about on this podcast about how humans are fairly adaptive and that adapting is creating. And it sounds like you're certainly doing that.
And I think we've all had to adapt this year.
We're going to dig in a little bit into the why music question. And I want to point out something to folks who might believe that being a singer is just remembering song lyrics. Not even close. And Gráinne alludes to this. Yes, there's the innate talent part, but it takes work, training, and commitment to the craft. We're going to hear of Gráinne's long stretches on the road playing, but first we'll note that having a steady and conversational hairdresser helps as well. When you said, I want to be a musician, like, is that embraced? Do parents, they jump on that like, woohoo, hot damn, my kid's going to be a musician? Or does it follow the same trajectory here? What's, don't you want to go into accounting?
Like, I did a music degree, but I'm not sure that it was the right thing for me to do. But at the same time, had I not done it, I wouldn't be where I am in this kind of journey today. Do you know what I mean? There's no point in like kind of looking back and regretting doing things that you did. Like, I mean, I always knew that I would sing. Like,
Why?
it was like one of the, I don't know. It was in me. And I had this thing, it was like, I know that I would be a singer. And it took me a really long time to realize that I had to do something about it. And sitting down and not doing anything about it was not going to make me a singer. I didn't do a lot of stuff in my 20s. Actually, when I was in doing my music degree, I got nodules in my vocal cords. So I stopped singing for a while and I didn't do a lot of stuff. Probably towards my mid to late 20s when I started singing with a band, a group, and kind of singing harmonies and doing bits and pieces. And then just around the time that I turned 30, I met a guy who was looking for a backing singer because he was going to release a record. And my hairdresser was looking for a childminder part-time. Because I worked in a language school at the time, and my hairdresser was like, maybe, you know, like of a student who might be interested. And then I kind of sat back and I thought, hold on a minute. If I did this part-time, then maybe I could do more music and maybe this would be a good idea. So I think my biggest fear at that time was telling my parents as a 30-year-old woman that I was giving up my full-time job and I was going to start like child minding, like a 20-year-old's job, you know what I mean? And doing more music. What really surprised me was that my mother had no problem with it. But my parents were really supportive, but I really thought my mother would be like, no, you're mad. Like, no way, you need an income. And I think it was more like this internalized fear that she was going to be against it. But let's be fair, really difficult to make loads of money playing music.
Oh, yeah.
I can understand why a parent would be against it, for want of a better word. So like I had a bit of a job, but I had a steady income coming in and I got used to that small amount of money being enough.
Yeah.
I didn't need loads. And I think that's probably nearly the bigger lesson, because if you expect to get into it and make loads of money, then that's not going to happen. But if you can be happy with like not making loads of money and doing what you want to do, then that's what you need to get right, I think.
If you think of like what we need to sustain ourselves, right? There certainly is some money components to it, but if you weren't able to fill your soul with something that felt right, that felt good, then enough might not have felt like enough. Yeah. As far as money goes.
I feel like I love what I do. Like I absolutely love what I do. And this last year has really got me into a place where I'm loving it even more and loving the processes more and being more productive and being more creative. And I don't give a shit about money. Like, of course I'd love to have more money. Do you know what I mean? I'd love to go out and buy myself loads of lovely new clothes, but it's not like, it's not about that for me. And I think that weird transition of kind of part-time childminding kind of eased me into that, like getting used to just not having loads of money, like, you know?
Well, what I really hear in that is that you realized or pushed yourself into this position where happiness comes from doing the thing you love, not from what's in your bank account. If you made $1 million a year digging ditches, would you be happy versus making nothing a year and doing the thing that you love and having enough to be able to survive?
Yeah. Valuing something different than the dollar or the pound
or the euro. What is your money? What is your
Euro.
money denomination?
Euro.
Okay.
So what were you doing? What was your full-time
I worked
job?
in language schools, sort of in the management end of things, and I ended up doing a bit of teaching, but then I ended up going back into management. To be fair, the end there was an interesting one. Like it came to an end actually just as I was going to LA to go and do a songwriting camp. And I was going for 2 weeks initially, and then the job finished just before I went unexpectedly. And I was like, do you know what? I'm not going to come back from LA. I'm going to stay there for a little while. You know, I was like, why not?
Perfect.
So I got to kind of hang out longer in LA than I had initially expected. I headed up to Portland. So I ended up being there for a month, and it was brilliant. That was 2017. That year, if you'd asked me like in March or April, like what my music plans for the rest of the year were, I'd have been like, no idea, not a whole pile, bits and pieces, not really sure. But once that happened at the beginning of June, like I think from September to Christmas, I was out of the country every weekend, bar like one or two.
Wow.
And the one or two that I was not out of the country, I was gigging around Ireland. So that was kind of another push, you know, in the right direction.
It sounds like it was a timing set up the way it did to open the door to a lot of opportunities that you would not have pursued if the circumstances were different.
Totally. I was trying to figure out, like, was I going to set up kind of as a sole trader or like a self-employed person and be a proper musician, or what was I going to do? And I was doing this like start your own business course, and then like the supports that I was looking for like were taken away, and I was like, oh God, what am I going to do? I'm renting this apartment in Dublin. I can't afford to rent it if I like, because I hadn't been booking gigs, because I was conscious that if I needed to be considered for this kind of grant, I needed to be kind of not really doing anything. So I hadn't anything planned. I had nothing lined up. So I had to like move out of my apartment. I moved in with my sister and her family, and thinking like, am I going to go back and get an office job, or, you know, go back to another language school, or am I going to try and make a go with this music? And I got a couple of phone calls about a couple of gigs, and I was like, yeah, that's definitely the way that we're going to go. And then you just kind of rose, because then you're conscious of it and you're going, okay, I need to figure out what's next. What am I doing next? Where am I going next? Where am I playing next? I need to be on it. And then you make the opportunity. But at that point, I needed somebody else to help me make the decisions, you know?
So it starts with being open, or kind of forced to be open, you know, however the arts gods decide to direct us. And then that being kind of like the catalyst that pushes you in the direction. And then once you've found that push, really keeping going with it.
Totally.
Now I see the people I've been drawn to teach me more. When to leave and when to stay and when to close.
Soon we're going to hear about a phenomenon that seems more a thing in Ireland than, say, the States. That is grants for artists through the government. Here in the States, I believe that they're often more parochial, at the state level or through private entities. I saw them a bit when I worked in development. As such, my message is for artist types, especially those given voice to an underserved population, or that document something unique about a specific place, or are very unique and innovative in their approach. Please pull out the interwebs machine, ask some questions, explore state and local giving, as well as private foundations, charitable giving, trusts, and the like. It might be worth your time to allow that application string to take hold so you can fly your kite.
But I gotta let go. I gotta let go.
You had mentioned going for a grant. Help us understand
okay. So I suppose there's loads of grant opportunities here in Ireland. So basically the Arts Council organise loads of funding opportunities for creatives in Ireland. For the most part in Ireland, the biggest kind of supplier of those grants is the Arts Council. For example, some of the stuff that I did in America, I got a travel and training grant. You have to jump through hoops to apply and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And actually last year I received a travel and training grant to go to a singing week-long workshop in Poland. But obviously with COVID, everything was cancelled. And I had this like €1,000 sitting in my online account with them that I hadn't drawn down because I was like, well, I'm not going to Poland and I don't want to take that money because it's not for me to just take. So I called them before Christmas and I said, I said, what's the story? I said, the money's still there. I was like, it was allocated to me. Is there a way that I could use it for something else? So I've converted and redirected the fund towards some training here. So I'm just going to do some singing lessons and some guitar lessons and like work on my craft.
Okay.
There's loads of funding opportunities here, I suppose, for different things. Like they can be small amounts of money for small projects, or there's one this week called they have a bursary award and you can apply for up to €20,000 to like work on stuff for like a year or 9 months or whatever. So that's this week's project.
Because here I'm thinking government level, so to speak. There are ways in which to get funding. By and large, you have to kind of establish yourself as a not-for-profit, and there's this whole type of incorporating, and you can get some money that way. There are some monies, I think, that are for folks that are quote unquote for profit in the arts. I don't know exactly the channel to get to those. And I think it's varied. I'm thinking of different artists that we've had before. I think Louis Sagoon, who's an artist, he applies for residencies to go and do art in various places. And that's the kind of the parallel I'm thinking here. I think in the States, there's just so many different angles. There's not one central
I suppose
place.
because our country is so much smaller, it probably makes it easier that there is just one place because there's only 4.5 million of us. Whereas there, your country's so big, everything is on a different scale.
And maybe because of the size, it's easier to do this, but I think it also sounds like there is a concerted effort and value to the arts and an identity. Yeah,
there's definitely a decent proportion of funds allocated to the arts. Now, you'll always find people who are complaining that, they weren't successful or they didn't get it, but not everybody can get it, But then as somebody pointed out this week, the more people that apply for these awards, they show the government that there's more of a need for it.
Yeah. Hearing that, it's like the way it's set up, or the way you just explained that, is that the people can really drive the way the government allocates funding. But the other thing that's kind of like rattling around in the back of my head is that, Ireland is its own country that has its own history, that has its own indigenous culture. And with America being big, lots of states, big cities, lots of people from everywhere, there's not this, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, but I feel like if you want to like pursue something that's related to a certain tradition or a certain area, you have to find the right pocket. Lots of stuff all thrown into one giant country over here. And I think that probably makes things a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Good for you for exploring for all these different options and finding ways in, and hopefully our stingy country will let you in.
Take me west of the city. Take me down by the sea.
Next up, the famine. And Catherine may be writing Gráinne's Bayag in the not-too-distant future. And we meander to figuring out a bit about how Gráinne writes her music and how the physical limitations of lockdown have a direct impact on her writing.
Where the sea kisses me.
So you worked at a language school and you've used the word storytelling a lot, and you've talked about your music being something that connects you with Irish culture. Do you see your music as being something like, what do you want to share with it? Super easy question, no problem. What is the purpose of your art?
I don't really feel like I want to subscribe to any sort of, like, I'm not doing it to make other people happy, I suppose. Really is the long and the short of it. I suppose I just want to connect with people, and if what I'm doing connects with people and resonates with people, then I feel like I'm doing a good job. And I don't necessarily want to write because I have to, or write because someone tells me to. I want to write what I want to write about. That can be really random things that like absolutely relate to my life. Or I'm in this songwriting club at the minute, and we did a prompt to write a folk song, and it was with somebody else, and we were doing it on Zoom, and we were kind of chatting, and he said, have you seen the documentary about the famine? And I said, no. I said, but that's a brilliant idea for a prompt. I'm going to go and watch it. I'll see you in an hour. And we wrote a song about the famine, and it's brilliant. It's absolutely going to be in my set. Myself and Brendan will do it in our Irish set. If you'd asked 2 months ago would I write a song about the famine, I'd be like, oh God, I don't know. It's a bit dark, like, do you know what I mean? But watching the documentary was really inspiring, and writing it with somebody else who was really into that, it really like brought us out. So, I mean, I think once I write something that I feel good about and I resonate with, resonates with me, and then if I can get it to resonate with others, I just want to, I suppose, connect with people in a positive way.
I love it. My like brain synthesis of everything you just said is that your music is a magnet to draw people who resonate with the same things that you do to you.
Will you write my biog for me?
Take it. You're a magnet. But what it sounds like with this prompt though is that it worked in the opposite direction. Like this person you're writing a folk song with is like, what do you think about the famine? You're like, I don't know. And there must have been something about the documentary that resonated.
Oh, like it's so good. Yeah. If you've got a VPN, find it. Absolutely brilliant. Like it's heartbreaking. And I cried multiple times.
Yeah. What's it?
It's called The
Hunger.
Again? I was blown away by it. You know, another thing I suppose, like as a child, you probably learned in school about the famine, but you're like, well, you know, what color is your hair? You know, you're not really paying attention. And then as an adult, you listen to it, and it's like, before the famine, Ireland had a population of 8.5 million, and it halved. Wow. Like 1 million people died, 2 million people went to America. It's insane.
Wow.
Before the famine, it was like a lower class of people, and like that the famine absolutely eradicated that class, because those people were not able, couldn't afford to live or to eat or anything. Yeah, it's fascinating. It's brilliant. Sorry, that's a total aside.
No, what I got from that is like how much that documentary spoke to you. It lit a passion in you, right? And so much so that Steve wrote down the documentary, and I'm like, I don't really know anything about the Irish famine. I'm curious about that now. And I think that's the infectious part of passion. Like you're now passing it on. You got it from this like co-folk songwriter, and now you've given it to us, and then we're going to share it with other people, and some people are going to feel it and be like, yes, I want to explore that. And so it's creating these like little pockets of connection and interest around different topics or whatever. I don't know. Now I'm rambling.
So much of what we know is introduced to us in school, and what history gets put in our books. And that's, I mean, I think probably the only thing I really know from the famine of which you speak is, you know, some artwork that I saw, and this is in college in art history. I think Van Gogh did the potato eaters, and there's a number of artworks that came out of that.
Well, totally. And also, like, I mean, as Irish students in school, we didn't learn a lot about American history. You learn about your own, and you don't necessarily learn about what's going on the other side of the world. And
well, and I wonder too if events like this are and possibly an interest are heightened given our current worldwide pandemic now.
It blew me away, and I've told so many people about it since. And for something that I hadn't even heard was online or available, you know what I mean? Like there's multiple songs could be written about it, you know. And I think I'll send you the song.
Yeah,
yes.
Please.
Yeah. Oh, love to hear the song.
Yeah. And so what are some of the other inspirations? What are the other things that you are driven to write about, and how do you go about your
writing? I suppose I tend to like take a lot of notes, you know, like the phone note thing. I have so many notebooks on the go, and I'll try and like write down ideas as I come up with them. I find that a lot of the ideas that I'll have as I'm like literally just about to drift off to sleep, and then I'll like repeat it to myself, not wanting to open my eyes, not wanting to turn on the light, not wanting to go and find my phone, not wanting to write it down, because I'm like, I'm totally going to remember it. I'll remember it. I promise. I'll remember this one. And I never do. if you think it's a good idea, just get off your arse and actually write it down, because you won't remember it in the morning. But I suppose from a topical, thematic perspective, I tend to write about, I like to write about what I know or what I've experienced. You know what I mean? I have a song that I wrote with a friend of mine that's coming out on Friday called Unacceptable. And she just moved over from England, and she had brought over her car and had to try and get it insured here. And when she called looking for insurance, the woman on the phone told her that her job as a musician was unacceptable. So, like, they don't like to insure musicians and creatives in Ireland.
Because you're bad drivers?
No, I think it's because they think we're partiers.
Yes. Okay.
So, like, I've had that experience as a musician. So, like, we sat down together and we wrote that song. I'm also in another group that we're working off prompt. Mm-hmm. And what I keep saying to the group is that, you know, if the prompt is spiders, right? I was like, I don't want you to write a song about spiders. I want you to start thinking about spiders, and I want to see where that takes you and where you go with that. Like, and it will be related to you and your experiences. You know what I mean? So it's like, where does that go for you, or where do you take it? You know?
Because one person's interpretation of a spider is going to be, and what they take from the spider is going to be very different than the next.
Totally. And it can be literal or metaphorical. It can go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
What I used to do was that I would take myself away to write. So I would, you know, book myself a really nice, like, little house somewhere, maybe by the coast or by a lake, and kind of lock myself away for a few days. And all of the little bits and pieces of ideas that I'd worked on or had in my phone, they would then come out and I would develop them, and the songs would finish, you know? And I struggled really hard to create at home. I think partly because I travel so much usually, that when I come home, my home is just kind of a bit of a sanctuary. And it's like, I just want to come home and get into my own bed and sleep in my own bed for multiple nights in a row, and, you know, have my stuff on my shelves in the bathroom. I struggled at the beginning of kind of when we went into kind of the initial lockdown with, like, how was I going to use this time? It didn't necessarily push me to write or create. I ended up doing The Artist's Way. I did a lot of, like, artist dates and other creative things, and knitting and painting and plants and making cards and thinking about music occasionally, but not really. It wasn't really until September that I literally, like, got into a groove, and I was just like, I just need to dedicate the time to it. I need to show up. I wasn't really showing up for the music before. In September, I started a songwriting group online. So we had a monthly task to complete. In November, I joined another group where we were writing a song a week, and I'm getting back into that groove now again. I'm more comfortable creating in this space now. And now I'm like, keep the lockdown, keep me here. I don't want to get out of this. I love this. Like, people, I don't want to see people. No, like, you know, I'm just loving.
When your bucket gets full with, you have a lot of ideas, then do you jump in and start writing, or do you kind of pick at it throughout and kind of go in?
The way that I've been writing with other people in the groups that I'm in now, that bucket is just kind of overflowing. Like, I have an old phone that I need to go through. I opened up there like about a week ago, and I was like, I have 2 songs that are almost complete songs. Like, I just press record on the phone and play away and sing away and kind of repeat it and do it again. And you know what I mean? And, like, there's a 17-minute voice note, and I'm like, what the hell's in here? And then you go, oh, wow, it's pretty much nearly a song. I just need to finish it, you know? So there's some of that. And then there's other ones where I'm going, I can't even make out what I'm playing, not to mention singing. Like, what's going on there? You know, I'm just trying to, I suppose, manage it all. Like, I feel like this week I've got 3 or 4 songs that I have to write this week, which is like a lot.
So what I imagined was this big pile of stuff of, like, songs in, like, full form in fragments that are just there, and you go through it and you find one, and it's like this most beautiful, like, treasure. Like, oh my gosh, a 17-minute song. Like, no, this is a song. This is what a gift. And then you find another one, you're like, I don't even know what that is. That's in the throwaway pile because I can't even read it. But and this is, like, my little fantasy, there's got to be something so, like, rewarding in finding that treasure.
Totally. And we had this discussion actually when we were doing The Artist's Way, because I was saying, like, I have all of these things that I need to go through, and I'm really not inclined to do it. I feel like it would be like a bit of drudgery. And then the girl that was doing the Artist's Way with us, she was like, no, you need to like reassess your mentality here and just look at it as like a really enjoyable process, because you're going to find things that you want to work on. You're going to find things that are almost finished. Okay, you're going to find things that you're going to want to throw out, but like you're actually going to be adding to your creative process here by doing this. Like once I switched that in my brain and I sat down with it and looked at it from that mentality, I was like, this is awesome. I'm kind of laughing at myself at the same time, because you know, like when you press record and you forget to unpress record, you're like,
there's a story I think Keith Richards talks about. He had a 4-track next to his bed that he would record things in. And, you know, he'd come in and before he goes to sleep, he'd have an idea and he'd just do it. And he had no memory of it. The next day he'd woke up and he saw, you know, the riff and everything for Satisfaction. And then like 40 minutes of him snoozing, you know. It's like finding money in your pocket in the spring, you know.
Yeah. Treasure.
Said, who are you, me pretty fur maid? Who are you, me honey? Who are you, me pretty fur maid? Who are you, me honey? I answered him modestly, I am.
Interesting stuff regarding the writing process for Gráinne. It seems that pre-COVID, she would escape alone to a cabin to write. And even though she might have sought out some of these groups before, she seems to really be leaning into another valid way of writing. That is writing within a group and co-writing. I wonder if it has anything to do with the idea that clubs, venues, and quite simply being with people is absent. Moving forward, there's an interesting piece coming up as Gráinne explores what a lot of us have probably thought recently. That is, how will our practices change post-pandemic? We also learn about her Nashville experience. Do you like the process of sort of managing and getting yourself out there and doing, you know, that work?
yeah, I mean, I think what I discovered, not last year, the year before, so when I put out the record that I did in Nashville, and I was, you know, trying to promote the record and put it out there, I didn't have anybody helping me. I was trying to get it to, you know, radio stations, and you're following up emails and all of that sort of jazz. Also trying to sell tickets to gigs. And then I'm also going, well, I've also got to go and do all these other things abroad. And I just found that my capacity was really strained. It made me realize that I probably need to have somebody on board. I do quite like the admin end of things, because I like the organization of it, and I like being in control. It's very hard to relinquish that, you know. I feel like what this kind of time has showed me is I'm really enjoying this part of the process at the minute, you know, like all of the creating and being at home and being productive, but I don't know how that's going to translate to being on the road.
Yeah.
And if I'm on the road the same amount that I would have been, this isn't going to work. I suppose, not that I'm worried about it, because obviously I don't think it's coming down the line for quite some time yet, but I do wonder how the balance will work out.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose I know now that I can work in this space, like I can have this routine here, but I do wonder how like that will fit in with an on the road routine.
Yeah.
What you're talking about speaks to what I think is just part of existing on this planet as a human. We're constantly needing to adapt to our circumstances. And the word I heard you use was wonder. I wonder what this is going to be. I wonder how this will show up, as opposed to like, I'm really nervous about how I'm going to be able to get everything done, or I'm afraid I won't be able to do this or that. That when you can approach something with curiosity and wonder, and it opens you up to additional options, as opposed to the narrow-minded, I have to do it this way, I've always done it this way. So I'm excited for you to be able to tour again. One, because you'll be able to tour again, and that means we can all experience your music and music in general, but then to like see how that shifts your process and your development as a person and as an artist.
I have a quick question. Well, maybe not a quick question, but why Nashville?
Well, actually, also in Ireland, we tend to have a lot of these like music seminars, and was this thing called the Belfast Nashville Festival. There's always something to be learned by going to these things. You'll meet somebody that you could end up writing with. You'll pick up a songwriting tip. You'll never go to one of those things and come away and say, I'm not going to one of those again. So this guy called Tom Yutz and Eric Brace, they were doing a talk on production and recording in Nashville. Super laid back. Like he's just, you know, like laid back in the chair, and someone would ask him a question and he'd be like, yeah, no, yeah, no. He was just like, you just come to my studio and we get the session musicians in and we'll do the charts and we just record and, you'll get a record done in a day. And I was like, hold on a minute. Are you joking me? So I just put my hand up and I went, look, let's say, I wanted to come, what would happen? And he was like, well, obviously, we'd talk beforehand and we'd set a budget and, you'd send me the songs and we'd pick the songs and we'd talk about what sort of vibe you're looking for and we'd decide what musicians we were going to get in and all that sort of stuff. And then you'd come to Nashville. We'd start the next day. The guys would come in and we'd go. And I was like what about a pre-production or rehearsal or, And he said, no need for that. You'll start playing and guys will start playing along and then we might play, half a song and then we'll just hit record. And I was like, this sounds mega. I'm like, this is right up my street. I totally want to do this. As soon as it finished, I just messaged him and I said, look, I'd be really interested in this. I messaged him in August and I said, I have a window in October. Have you any time? And he gave me some dates. The 1 day recording thing went out the window, to be fair. And he was like, look, we'll look at kind of 6 days. We get the guys in. And he gave me an outline of how we do it or whatever. It probably cost me about a third of what it would have cost me to record the record here.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Was it the efficiency that you're speaking to?
Yeah. But also efficiency is one thing, but it was efficiency with musicality and feel and wanting to be there. You know what I mean? It wasn't that you were turning up and these guys were dialing it in, Yeah. They're super talented dudes. We actually ended up recording and mixing the record in 2.5 days.
Wow.
What the hell, I got such a buzz out of it. I just couldn't believe.
Again, kind of speaking to something we said earlier, it was presented to you. It's okay, let me explore this option. And you went that option. It made sense. And it kept making more sense as you looked into it.
So cool.
When he sent me the tracks and he was like, don't over listen to them. Don't over analyze it. Don't be coming back to me saying, I think that note's a bit out of tune. I was like, no worries. That's not me. This is what it is. And as soon as I listened to it, I was like, great.
That's a fun process.
I love it.
There's so much stuff to learn about not only your process, but how Ireland has influenced that and how Ireland just influences the music and how it fits into this bigger world. I think that's all so cool to hear about.
I would love to talk to you again once we're on the other side and you are finding that balance in how you're touring and how you're writing, and if you've got someone kind of doing a little bit more of the administration for you, how you handle letting go of some control. I would love to catch you on that end.
I'd so be up for that. That'd be so cool.
Because I think the thing I'm walking away from today, from you, is just this openness to go with something. Even this Nashville thing, you met these guys, you're like, that sounds cool, I'm gonna go, finding just the little thing that nudges you and then rolling with it.
So Gráinne, what's next?
At the minute now, I've got loads of songs. I would love to get into a studio and record some of this stuff, but that's not where I'm at right now. I've literally today I got delivered my new MacBook Air, which I got some funding to help me with that. Actually, I got a little grant, which is great. But I'm looking at kind of improving my home recording system so that I can make better demos, or at least maybe be able to do things that I could send to somebody else that they might be able to work on and we could put something together. So I might look at trying to work remotely with somebody, maybe for a track or two, and try and put something out that way. Do you know what I mean?
Cool.
I look forward to that, and it's been really, really fun talking to you.
So fun.
Great. Thank you.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Have a wonderful day, and
likewise. See you later.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We had such a great time chatting with Gráinne and learning a bit about music in Ireland. I hope, too, that you enjoyed listening to some of her music in this episode, and I invite you to look her up. We have links to her website where you'll be able to learn more about her and access her music in the episode description and on our website. The Kites and Strings website is www.kitesandstrings.com, and talk about us with your friends. Please rate us wherever you podcast because it really helps. And if you're able to, please look up the patreon.com page and search Kites and Strings podcast. That way, if you have a few extra dollars a month, you can really support Kites and Strings to help us pay the bills. You can also find Kites and Strings on Facebook and Instagram and newly Twitter and YouTube. The Kites and Strings theme music is by Harrison Amir. And today we got the treat of being able to listen to some of Gráinne Hunt's music. Today's episode was produced and edited by me, Steve Plume, at Turning Stones Counseling, Inc. Be safe.